Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm super excited for today's video. It's a little bit different, but I am totally inspired by Joey. He is an American YouTuber who's based in Amsterdam who makes a lot of videos like these, so I'll link him down below. So you should check out his videos, but I wanted to make something of my own, kind of related to it. So it's America versus the Netherlands, and today I'm going to be talking about dating. Basically, for those of you who don't know, I lived in the US from when I was 10 till 16, so a big chunk of my life, and like in that time was when I first, had my first boyfriend, first started dating. So basically I've noticed a lot of differences living there and living here, and also I still have a lot of friends in the US, and talking to them about dating there versus here, it just always seems so different. So I don't know, I thought it would be cool to maybe talk about some of the differences that I've noticed. I have like a sheet of paper with my differences, so if I look down sometimes, that's why. Basically, ever since I moved, I've noticed that dating is such a loaded word. Like, it means so much to so many different people. I don't know, I would always say when I was talking to friends here about my past, I would say I dated him, or we did this when we were dating, or oh, he would always take me out here. And my friends would say, like my Dutch friends would say, wow, Lois, you've had a lot of relationships. And I would be like, no, not relationships, like we just dated. And I just noticed that it just doesn't really mean the same thing in the Netherlands as it does in America. For me, dating is just going on a date. That's already kind of like, oh, we went on a date, we're dating, we've gone on a couple dates. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a relationship, but in the Netherlands, it's a lot more exclusive. So there's a couple of like main categories I want to talk about and be differences. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. It's really different. I want to do more about these, about like the differences in college and high school and stuff like that. But since I do talk about dating a lot on my channel, I thought I would start with the differences in dating. So first, the dates. So I'll talk about America first from what I noticed. So since most people can drive when they're 16, especially if you're not living in a big city, you often see that your date picks you up in their car, they knock on your door, they often meet your parents if you're still living at home, and you go on your date, and when they bring you back, they drop you off again, you like kiss on the porch. A lot of the like stereotypes from the movies are true. I do remember like some of my first dates when I was like 16, like I would always get picked up and stuff like that, or I don't know, it was just always more romantic in that way, or old school in that way. And a lot of my friends always ask me like, is that true? Do people really pick you up? And I remember like on my first date with my first boyfriend, he like met my parents because he like came over and knocked on the door, and I feel like that's not as common in Europe. Also because when you're under 21 in the US, you can't drink unless you're illegally drinking at a party. I feel like dates are a lot more activity based. So I remember like some dates where I would go bowling, we would go mini golfing, to an arcade, to the movies. I feel like when I had my first boyfriend in the US, we would go to the movies every weekend because like what else can you do? And we would always be kind of doing something. I feel like when you're older, obviously you're going more out to dinner and drinks, but from the past, that's what I've noticed. And I've also had, in the US, guys will bring you flowers on like when you're dating, you're on the first couple dates, or they'll bring you chocolates or candy. I have never experienced that in Europe. And I feel like group dates are usually more reserved for when you're like in a relationship. So either you're like hanging out with a group of friends, or you're going on a date, and group dates are more like, oh, let's double date, like I have a relationship, you have a relationship. That's what I've noticed in the US. Again, these are based on my experiences and my friends. This could be different. The US is so big, like the Netherlands is so big. This is just stuff that I've heard. So in the Netherlands, I feel like dates usually happen when you like meet somewhere. So you're like, oh, let's meet at a bar, let's meet at a party, or are you going to this party? And you kind of meet there. The whole picking someone up phenomenon isn't as common, or someone maybe comes over, but it's not as much as like activity based. I feel like a lot of it is based around having a drink and talking, or like hanging out, chilling is what we say here, but it's not as much based on like we're gonna go bowling or going to an arcade, I think, or something like that. And bringing flowers or gifts in the Netherlands, like I said before, isn't really common. So I've never seen that happen on a date before. And also meeting your parents is usually reserved for later. So yeah, usually even if you're like still living at home, you would meet your date somewhere, because you can be in a bar or a club when you're, 16, 17, 18 usually. So yeah, it's a little bit different. And I feel like there's a lot more group dates or group hangout. And that kind of brings me along into like the person you're dating. So what I wanted to say about this is that like in the US, I feel like it's far more common to be dating someone like randomly. So like even someone like randomly from your school that you've never talked to, you could like ask them out, be like, hey, look, I saw you in the hall, I think you're cute, do you want to go out sometime? Or someone you see at a coffee shop or in the line for car valet. So this is a funny story of mine, just like in between, little anecdote. I was at the W Hotel in West Hollywood in LA, and I was there on vacation, and I was literally standing in line for the valet, and these guys were getting their car and in front of us, like I was with my mom, and this guy just starts talking to me like who I am, and he asked me if I want to like party with them, go out with them sometime, and I was like, what? Like I was underage, I was like 17 at the time, and I was like, are you seriously like asking me out on a date like while in line for the valet? So I feel like in the US it's a lot more common to ask someone out that you don't really know as well. Even a friend of mine who's in college told me that like she would be in the library and a guy would just like pass a paper over to her with his number on it. Like it's a lot more common. Versus in the Netherlands, I feel like it's far more common for it to be someone that you know, like from your classes at school, from your friend group or friends of friends. So that's why I feel like group dates are a lot more common, because you kind of have a shared social circle. So if a guy's like, hey, I'm going to this bar tonight with my friends, you should come, kind of insinuating that it's a date, but also with a group of friends around. Going up to strangers isn't as common. When I say this to friends that I'm like, oh, you should go up to that guy, he's really cute, like I feel like it happens less here than it does in the US. But I do think all of this is changing with online dating today. I feel like a lot more people in both sides are like seeking out strangers to date. So not necessarily everything that I'm saying here is like 100% accurate, I think. What is a date? This is also, I feel like I've noticed, really different. So in America, when you ask someone of the opposite sex to do something, it's often already classified as a date. I have an example from an American guy friend, and he literally like was going hiking with a group of friends, a group of guys and girls, and he asked this girl that he sure was like interested in, but it was more friendly. He said, hey, do you want to like come hiking with us? And she was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm like not looking to date right now. And he was like, it's hiking. But yeah, they're like asking the opposite sex is easy, like more seen as a date, even though you can have opposite sex friends, obviously. That's not what I'm saying, but I feel like it's a lot more like just date oriented. Versus in Holland, if a guy would ask me to hang out, to go out to a bar with his friends and him, I would not classify it as a date at all. It's a lot more just like chill, a hangout. And asking someone of the opposite sex to do something doesn't necessarily mean there are like romantic feelings or sexual feelings behind that. Dating more than one person at the same time. This landed me in hot water when I first moved to Amsterdam 3 years ago, because I know that in the US it's pretty common, and you kind of see it on shows as well, like to be dating more than one person at the same time. That Brian went out with Jane on Friday night, and then on Saturday night he's out with Stacy. You know, it's more done, and dating is seen more as like a game, and I feel like people are always kind of looking for what's around the corner. They call it kind of like the revolving door phenomenon. People are always like, keep enough people in the revolving door so it's not empty. And in Europe, at least in the Netherlands, this is not done. Like when you're dating, especially if you've like gone on a third, fourth, fifth date, you're really getting into that dating groove, you are not dating more than one person at the same time. If you date someone, the date doesn't go well, you don't want to see them again, okay, you can move on to the next person, but not simultaneously. And so in my first year, I was dating 2 guys at the same time. Like I'd gone on a couple dates with one of them, and I'd met the other and gone on like 1 or 2 dates with them. And when I told friends about this, they were Dutch friends, they were like, what? Like you can't do that. So I feel like that is really different between the two. And I feel like, yeah, it's just not something that's done here as much, which I get too. Like I feel like maybe it is more respectful to just spend your time focusing on one human, but I also like the whole having a backup option. So yeah, that's a pretty big difference. So if you're European and you go to the US and you're dating someone, it's not that weird if like maybe a couple nights later he's going out with someone else. Defining for relationship, DTR as we used to call it in the US. This is something that like I have said to my friends. I'm like, oh, but have you guys DTR'd yet? And they're like, what are you talking about? So this is way more common in the US. I feel like you're pretty quick in America to DTR after like a couple of dates, I don't know, a couple weeks. And usually what happens then is you define the relationship, you say, look, I want to keep seeing you exclusively, like I want this to go a certain way, or at a certain point you're like, look, I'm not ready to have an exclusive relationship, so maybe we should like back things off. And at this point, if you decide to go the exclusive relationship route, is usually where you would like stop seeing other people. So that's where you're like, okay, I'm dating 3 people at the same time, I've hung out with all 3 of them, and I really like, it's kind of like The Bachelorette, I really like this person the best, so I'm gonna keep going with them once you've defined the relationship. So that's definitely different, and it's kind of where you like cut it off. In Europe, it's way less common to define the relationship. Also, having like labels at all is way less common. People like to just be free, and especially in Netherlands, like I said, a lot of my friends didn't even know what that was. And I even had one friend from college who had been seeing this guy for 9 months. That's literally a whole pregnancy. And they were like, you know, would go on vacation together. They would hang out every weekend. They would be dating. And I was like, oh, so he's your boyfriend? She's like, no, we've like never defined anything. And I was like, what? They never even had like talked about if they were being exclusive, which I found so bizarre, but like good on her, I guess. They didn't feel the need to like define the relationship. And even when I've dated guys for like 2 or 3 months here in the Netherlands, we'd never really gotten to like the defining stage yet. It's just very different. So that was something I definitely had to get used to, and I'm still someone who likes to define the relationship, but I've noticed that I need to like reel it in a little bit. My first boyfriend in the US, he was American, and he literally asked me to be his girlfriend on the first date. So he defined the relationship like right away. We had known each other like before that. And like I said before, American men, in my opinion, or women as well, they really love the label. We're dating, we're hooking up, we're exclusive, we're friends with benefits, fuck buddies, like whatever you want to call it. There's so many different labels, but there's a label. In Europe, it's a lot more like no label, you know, we're just chilling, just casual, we're seeing each other, but nothing big. So yeah, so that's definitely something that I had to get used to. The next category that I wanted to talk about is chivalry. So I feel like, maybe, again, this is all my opinion, maybe this is different for other people, but I feel like American men that I've experienced are more chivalrous. So it's more like, I'm gonna plan a date for us, I'm gonna take initiative, I'm gonna hold open the door for you, I'm gonna help you across the street, like hold your hand. It's a lot more of that in all the American guys that I've seen. And men are a lot more focused on paying. So men really like do want to initiate to pay. You also have this in Europe, but I feel like in America it's even more common. And I feel like a lot of women also kind of expect that in a way because it's more common there. Versus like in the Netherlands, it's called going Dutch for a reason. So splitting it is like very common. And women and men don't really care. I feel like women don't care either. It's not as much about like holding doors open for you and like stuff like that. Versus like in America, like I said before, you know, picking someone up, dropping them home. It's all part of this like chivalrous game, I guess. So that was something big that I noticed when I, you know, first moved here. When I lived in the US with my first boyfriend, he literally would make me like sit in the car and wait to open my door until he could like open it for me. And if I would try to open my door, he would like make me close it and he would open it. It was very bizarre. It was very sweet, very chivalrous, but it was definitely kind of crazy. And the last category, let's talk about sex, baby. I don't want to get fully into everything about sex because I feel like there's so much to be said, but these are just some things that I've noticed. Basically, in the US, I feel like you can divide it up into 2 categories. If you're interested in pursuing something with someone as like an actual relationship, or, you know, seeing if it could go towards a relationship, you don't have sex on the first date. I feel like there's a lot more stigma there that if you have sex on the first date, it's just a hookup and it's like a one-time thing, or you can become friends with benefits. But I have guy friends, even girlfriends, who say like, oh, if you have sex on the first date, you know, it's never gonna be something, it's never gonna be real, they're easy, you know. It's great for one night, but it's not gonna turn into like your future relationship. So there's a lot more of a stigma there. And also, even if you are in a relationship or dating someone, talking about sex is a huge taboo still. Maybe not when you're like in a relationship, but like leading up to that point with the dating phase, like talking about sex is not a common subject when you're on dates. And that is definitely different in Europe. When you're dating a guy, it's a lot easier to talk about sex. It's a lot more open to talk about sex, what you like, if you're ready, if you're not ready. Versus in the US, there's still this big taboo around it. I think that's too because in the Netherlands we have really great sexual education. So from the point that kids are really young, they're already being taught that it's okay and normal to talk about sex. So this is something that I'm super happy about in the Netherlands. But any guy that I talked about, not just that I had sex with, but just wanted to talk about sex and how that was and how it was different and what he expected and stuff like that, that was always easy to do, even on a first or second date. And even with my like boyfriend in the US, it took us a while to get past the awkward stage of like talking about sex, because for him it was very uncomfortable. And here in the Netherlands, I feel like it's a lot more common for people to have sex on the first date. And even if it's not more common, I feel like there's not that big of a stigma that if you have sex on the first date, you can't have a relationship. I have a lot of friends who have dated guys for months to years that they had sex with on the first date. It's not like, oh, you had sex on a date, you can't have a relationship. And like I said, these aren't golden rules, there are always exceptions, but these are just the things I've noticed in trends with like me and my friends. So in the US, it's a lot more, you know, if you really like, a lot of people have like a 3-date rule or a 5-date rule. You see that in movies as well because they want to be taken seriously. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I thought this was so fun to research and to do and think about my experiences and like my friends' experience and talk to people. Well, like I said before, I want to do this on like a variety of subjects. So if you guys have ideas about what you want to know the difference of between America and the Netherlands, let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, subscribe to Joey, who I mentioned in the link down below, and I'll see you guys again soon with a new video.